All right, we bring in Frank Isola at the Frank Isola. He is at ESPN, where you can often see him on Around the Horn or PTI. He also is on Sirius XM, and he's with us every single Thursday morning at around this same time. Frank, did you love as much as I did? First of all, I'm assuming you saw this story that LSU has self-imposed a bowl ban, despite the fact that they are 3-5 and about to fall to 3-6, and potentially falling to 3-7 if they were to lose to Ole Miss in the final week of the season. This is just a kind of selfless act that I've come to expect in college athletics.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm going to pick up on that theme, and just for this year alone, I'm going to remove myself from People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive. So I'm not.
That's really nice of you. You know, with COVID going on and being as wildly good-looking as you are, it would really be unfair to just force people to, just look at you on the cover of the magazine again.
You know what it also tells you, though? Like, all right, so LSU had this dream season last year, and
Yes.
Joe Burrow was incredible. It just tells you, like, how great Alabama is, because they're good every year. Like, and I get LSU for the most part is usually pretty good, but they win the national championship, and this year it's hard to get back to anything close to that. And yet, the Alabama machine that Nick Saban has put together, it's like, yeah, they don't win all the time, but every year they're in contention.
This is a good topic, by the way. I want people to send me your tweets. What will you remove yourself from that you actually have no chance of being any way significant factor in? Frank's idea of the sexiest man of the list, year list at People, that's a good one. Everybody in the studio think about that too. Like, what would you, being as selfless as LSU, what would you voluntarily also remove yourself from? And the truth of the matter is LSU would have been in a bowl game because they're going to put everybody in bowl games this year and just basically treat it as an 11th game of the season in the SEC. And so, I mean, they would have been in a crappy bowl, but they would have been in a bowl game. So they're not, banning themselves from something where they could have contended. Like Auburn, I loved this too. Auburn is not that good. I think they were picked. I mean, they've been very good under Bruce Pearl, but this year they're going to have a little bit of a dip back, it appears. And Auburn has banned themselves from postseason play.
Exactly.
Even though they were projected, I think, to finish 7th in the SEC, in which case they would have never made the NCAA tournament. But that is this move by LSU is even funnier because it comes in the middle of the season when you already know exactly where you're going to be slotted. And tying in with that, we opened the show, not surprisingly, talking about this. What do you think about the Big Ten's decision to change the rules to allow Ohio State to be in the Big Ten title game?
Usually I'm a stickler for the rules, but you knew this was going to happen. If Ohio State didn't get to that, minimum number that, they just arbitrarily pulled out of a hat, when did they come up with this rule, in July or August to begin with? So I get it. Listen, is it unfair for Florida? Yeah, but Florida can also play their way in. It's certainly unfair for Cincinnati, Texas A&M. On some level, it's unfair to Northwestern, but I think the Big Ten is looking at the bigger picture. They figure the only team that we can get into the college football playoff is going to be Ohio State. If they make it, it's good for the entire conference. That's why they're doing it. It's a bit. I mean, you know this better than anybody. It's a business thing. It has nothing to do with fairness. Really, nothing to do about football. It's really the 4 teams that really everybody wants to see in there. And I'll say this too. I mean, Ohio State. Why can't they try to get a game this weekend? That's what the Big Ten.
I wanted them to play against Texas A&M. I mean, to me, that would have been. Then they could still play for the Big Ten championship the next week, but that would be the play-in game that I think most people out there would love to see. And I'm with you. I mean, it seems a little bit unfair, or quite a bit unfair to me, that Northwestern is, one, they qualified under the existing rules, so congratulations to Northwestern. 2, they are having to play against Illinois this weekend. So Northwestern, not only are the rules getting bent in Ohio State's favor, but Northwestern has to play a game against Illinois this weekend, which doesn't matter, by the way, at all in terms of being able to win in the Big Ten championship game. Meanwhile, Ohio State gets a bye. So Ohio State gets 2 weeks to rest up and be ready for Northwestern, and Northwestern goes out and plays against a team in Illinois that would love an opportunity to get one more win. And so that just doesn't seem fundamentally fair to me, kind of like a trap game on steroids for Northwestern, not to mention they have another game where they could get a serious injury, where they could have something occur that makes them even less of a valid opponent for Ohio State next week. So that doesn't seem fair to me. To me, if the Big Ten is going to say Ohio State's in the playoff game, then they should cancel for Northwestern the game against Illinois and give Northwestern the exact same situation that Ohio State has.
No, I think you're right, and the precedent has been set, and I think that's a good idea. Having played Texas A&M, first of all, it's a game that everybody would want to watch, and it would kind of be a playing game to the college football playoff. Now, that's why last Thursday, BYU, I gained a lot of respect for them because that the cliche. The cliche that everybody uses, I'll play you anytime,
anybody, anywhere, anytime.
They did that. They, on a Thursday, they said, all right, we'll go to Coastal Carolina and we'll go play the game. Now, I'm not going to make an excuse for them, and I don't think they will make an excuse, but I give them a lot of credit for putting a game together that quickly. They're the team. I mean, their program is a little bit more established in Coastal Carolina. They were willing to go on the road and play the game, and they came a couple of yards from having a pretty good comeback. I give Coastal Carolina credit. It was a bit of an obnoxious team. I mean, it's a team that you want to root for. It was a little hard to do that, and their fans calling themselves the best team in South Carolina, that's another story. But I give BYU a lot of credit. It also just tells you, too, it's funny, right, about football, and, starting with Bill Belichick or Nick Saban, how important preparation is. And it certainly is. Practicing in football is important. They're finding out their opponent on a Thursday, and yet somehow they could still put together a game plan. They could still make the trip out there, and they can get the thing going. That's why not have Ohio State play a game this weekend? And really, that's a great point that you bring up. You're making Northwestern do it, so Ohio State's getting every advantage. They're in the game, and they're getting this, the so-called bye week.
Yeah, it's crazy. And what I would circle back around to on stories like these is and to me, this is political, and it's also business. What is best for a party or a school or an organization, they're going to do, regardless of what the precedents are. And that's sometimes what people get upset about with my show. I try to apply the same not perfect at it, but I try to apply the same precedents to whatever opinions I have, so that if you go back and look at it, it's like a judge who is having to decide tough cases. You're like, oh, well, Clay said this, and it actually ties in from a precedential value with what he said 3 years ago. That upsets people because emotion, like all the Ohio State fans are like, of course you would have to do this. Okay, that's fine. I understand that argument. But if Ohio State was the school that was losing, right, in this scenario, would the argument be the same? In other words, what if Indiana had beaten Ohio State, but they had only played 5 games, and then Ohio State goes on and they go 7-1 against their schedule? Would they feel like it was fair that Indiana would get in? Maybe, maybe not. I've always thought most fans, because fandom is emotion-based, and honestly this ties in well with social media, because social media is emotion-based, logic often loses. And logic is what really should govern the day, because it's founded in some way in an intelligent analysis of situations, as opposed to what result do you want? Okay, let's figure out a way to get there.
Yeah, and with all due respect to all those programs, the Big Ten, and if Michigan is playing well, it's Michigan and it's Ohio State. And the one thing about Ohio State, all the years going to Cleveland for either basketball or baseball games, it really strikes you. Like the two teams in Ohio are the Cleveland Browns, and it's really Ohio State. I've been to games where one day they showed Jim Tressel on the Jumbotron. I think we got a Cavs game. The place went crazy.
Yeah.
Then they started doing the Ohio chant that they do with spelling out the word. But you're 100% right. If the roles reversed here and they put Indiana in the game, the people at Ohio State would be screaming. But once again, it goes back to what the Big Ten believes is best for them. We have the best chance for us to win a national championship would be Ohio State. We're all going to benefit from something like that. I still don't know why they just don't go to 8 teams. And I get it. The 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th team, those programs, they'll be screaming. But at least, why not just do it?
They're going to do it next year, Frank. I will be stunned. This year, I think the argument actually does make some sense, which is the fewer teams you have in the playoffs, the less of COVID outbreak issue you have to worry about. And I think the NFL is going to find that out with going to 14 teams, 7 from the AFC, 7 from the NFC this year. But I would be stunned beyond belief if next football season they aren't going to 8. And one reason I think it's so important, I'm a huge college football fan, obviously. But I think they've been kind of stunned that this has happened. It's the same teams every year in the college football playoff.
Good point. Yeah.
It's Alabama, it's Clemson, it's Ohio State, and there's occasionally, an Oregon or an LSU or an Auburn or a Washington or a Florida State that will blip up. But pretty much every year, you can write in 3 different teams that you feel like are going to be in the playoff, and it's been Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame. Why is that? Sorry, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. Why is that? Because I think all the recruits have bought into the idea of the college football playoff as being such a big deal that once you get there for a couple of years, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. All the best players go to you because they want to go to the college football playoff. So I think going to 8 will just open up the college football playoff opportunity to more teams, and theoretically then at least there will be more variety in terms of the playoff. Plus, let's be honest, the playoff, having more teams in the playoff and having more teams with chances to make the playoff is much better for college football than right now. By the second week of September, half the schools in America are already eliminated. And by the end of September, a huge percentage of people out there know that their team has no chance to make the college football playoff. There's nothing else like that in sports where 4 weeks in, a huge percentage of teams have no chance to play.
Yeah, and the advantage that I would give to the top 4 seeds, and I don't know if they would do it this way, I would give them a home game. How
Yeah,
great
I'm
would that
100%
be?
with you. That's the way it needs to be. And then you keep what's best about college football rolling, which is the on-campus games, and we all know it's a monstrous advantage to have a 100,000-seat stadium filled with your fans for a playoff game. And yes, you're right that's the scenario that needs to be set up in that way.
Let me give you one quick scenario here. What happens if Clemson beats Notre Dame in a close game? Notre Dame falls out of the top 4, or you think they still stay?
I think they're in. I think the way Ohio State gets left out, the only way, is if Florida beats Alabama, because I think Alabama's in as soon as they beat Arkansas this weekend. If Florida beats Alabama, both those SEC teams would be in. And I don't see a way you could leave Notre Dame out if they lose. Now, if they lost 45-3, I think that could change the mind of the committee. But if they lose and have a respectable performance, I think your 4 would be 2 from the ACC, Clemson and Notre Dame, and 2 from the SEC, again, if Florida beat Alabama, which would box out Ohio State. Now, the real irony here, Frank, would be if Ohio State lost to Northwestern. Yes. After all these moving parts and after everything they've done to try to give Ohio State an advantage to get them into the playoff with 6 games, if they lost to Northwestern, that would be everything kind of blowing up in the Big Ten's face. That would be perfect for 2020.
It's going to be hard not to root for Northwestern in that game, but we might be just rooting for a game that's competitive by the second quarter, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt at all about that. Frank, we'll talk to you next week. Appreciate it, my man, and hope you have a good weekend.
Thanks, Ty. You too.